"Stay close, Freya," Ray muttered, his voice barely a whisper against the wind. His hand rested on the butt of his worn axe, a familiar weight that brought a sliver of comfort in this desolate world. The air hung heavy with the stench of decay, a constant reminder of the horrors they faced. They moved cautiously through the skeletal remains of a once bustling city. Crumbling buildings clawed at the sky, hollow eyes staring down at them, dust and debris crunched under their boots, the only sound louder than the hammering in Ray's chest. "Don't worry, Ray," Freya replied, her voice small but steady. "I'll be careful." There was a wisdom in her young eyes that belied her age, a harsh lesson learned from a world gone mad. Ray only nodded, his gaze sweeping their surroundings, ever vigilant. A low growl cut through the silence, sending a jolt of adrenaline through Ray's veins. He tightened his grip on his axe, his senses sharpening as he scanned the street. 3 figures shambled from an alleyway, their flesh rotting, their eyes burning with a hollow hunger. "Get behind me," he ordered, pushing Freya back with one hand. There was no fear in his voice, only a chilling calm that came from countless encounters like this. The undead lunged. Ray moved with a speed that belied his size, his axe a blur as he cut them down. 1, 2, 3. The thud of their bodies hitting the ground was the only sound that followed. He didn't hesitate, didn't waste time checking if they were truly dead. He knew better. A flicker of movement caught Ray's eye. He spun around, axe raised, his heart pounding in his chest. It was a child, no older than 10, its face contorted in a grotesque mockery of life. It shambled towards him, tiny hands outstretched, a low moan escaping its decaying lips. The axe felt heavy in Ray's hands, heavier than it ever had before. He stared into the vacant eyes of the child, his reflection staring back at him from the blade. For a moment he hesitated, a flicker of something akin to guilt twisting in his gut. But the moment passed as quickly as it came. He had to survive. Freya was counting on him. He closed his eyes and swung the axe. The thud of the impact reverberated through him, leaving a hollow ache in its wake. "It's getting dark," Freya said, her voice tight with exhaustion. "We should find shelter." Ray nodded, his gaze scanning the nearby buildings. They found refuge in a dilapidated apartment building, its windows boarded up, the air thick with dust and the silence of the dead. Freya collapsed onto a dusty couch, her shoulders slumping with relief. "Do you think we'll ever find Grace?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Grace was their friend, separated from them during the chaos. "We will," Ray said, forcing confidence into his voice. He wasn't sure if he believed his own words, but he clung to hope like a lifeline. He had to. For Freya, for Grace, for himself. Hope was all they had left. A guttural roar echoed through the empty street, sending chills down Ray's spine. He had never heard a sound like that before, a sound filled with such raw power and rage. He turned, his hand instinctively reaching for his axe, and saw it. It was a hulking monstrosity, twice the size of any undead he had ever encountered. Its flesh was torn and mangled, its bones protruded at unnatural angles, and its eyes burned with a terrifying intensity. The creature charged. Ray met its attack head-on, the impact sending shockwaves through his body. He grunted, his muscles screaming in protest, but he held his ground. He had to. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about proving something, to himself and to the world that had abandoned them. They battled amidst the ruins, the sound of their struggle echoing through the desolate city. Ray fought with every ounce of strength he possessed, his axe a whirlwind of steel, but the creature was relentless. It was a force of nature, driven by a hunger that knew no bounds. He felt a surge of desperation as the creature landed a blow, sending him crashing to the ground. He tasted blood, his vision blurred, but he refused to give up. He scrambled back to his feet, his body aching, his spirit unbroken. With a roar that ripped from his throat, Ray charged forward, his axe held high. He poured all his anger, all his grief, all his will to survive into that one final desperate attack. The world seemed to slow down as the axe connected, cleaving through flesh and bone. Ray stood panting, his chest heaving as the creature's lifeless body slumped to the ground. He stared down at the monstrosity, a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration washing over him. He had won. He had survived. He looked around at the ruined city, at the shadows stretching long and ominous in the fading light. He knew this was just the beginning. There were more dangers out there, more challenges to face. He needed to get stronger. He needed to find more resources, more weapons, more survivors. He needed to find a way to protect Freya, to find grace, to build a future in this shattered world. He took a deep breath, the weight of responsibility settling heavily on his shoulders, and started walking. He had a long way to go.